So namaste my dear friends, and welcome back for the second day of this wonderful event which is called Celebrating Sir, that we have started to honor our wonderful teacher and a person who has touched our hearts and lives very deeply. We will start with traditional lighting of the lamp. We will start with that, madam, please. Please, madam. So, once again, my friends, namaste and good afternoon. Today is a very auspicious day, the second day of Pongal, a very important day for many South Indians, especially all Indians, but especially South Indians. And I really feel very touched that all of you have chosen to come here today to celebrate the life and teachings of our teacher TKV Desikachar. I would like to just say a few words about Sir, because maybe some of you are not really familiar with all that Sir represents and stands for. Sir is not just a yoga teacher, but is somebody who also changed the way yoga is seen in modern era. Many people thought that, many Western people, especially in the early 50s and 60s, were all thinking that yoga meant that somebody had to stand in the head and had to do very complicated asanas and things like that. But he changed the face of yoga by bringing the depth of its teachings in so many different dimensions. Among them is he is the one who actually created interest in the yoga philosophy, which is called as the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali. I remember talking to many of my father's European students way back in the 70s when there was a conference of yoga organized in a town called Zinal. There was about 400, 500 yoga teachers who had all been teaching for a couple of decades already. And my father at that time was a young man and a young teacher. And he went there and he asked these people, how many of you have heard of somebody called Patanjali, who is the founder of the yoga system? And apparently there were probably one or two actually who only heard about him and nobody knew what he stood for. In fact, my father's students sometimes would joke that some people thought that Patanjali was actually an Italian, like the cousin of Michelangelo, like Patanjali, Michelangelo, things like that. So creating such a revolution from those kind of people who knew nothing about Patanjali, now everybody is talking about Patanjali and want to now study yoga philosophy, was all started because of somebody like Sir. Sir also is somebody who gave us a very, very easy way to represent asanas and give to students. We may not be able to give every student a photograph of what asanas they should do each time they come to class. So because he was an engineer, he just made a very quick analysis of little drawings he made, which he gave to people very freely. He didn't copyright it, he just gave it very freely to people, which everybody uses it now, even those who are not from our tradition, but many of them don't even know that it was Sir who actually created something like that. And I still have the original notebooks where it's from the 1969, 70, that era where all these drawings were being made. Some of them are made by my mother and some from my father, and they look a little bit different than what it is now, but they are what we call the beta type, the pilot project perhaps, which is what became eventually the stick figures that was formalized a bit later in the late 70s, early 80s. Another important thing that Sir did was to actually bridge the gap between yoga and the healing paradigms, the medical system. A lot of people now, today, talk about yoga therapy, which they think is fashion now. It's the next trend, but Sir already was bringing forward yoga therapy many, many years ago before the public even talked about it. And today, when many people, especially in the context of therapy, are asking questions like, can yoga actually help people with mental conditions? Then again, I always have to say Sir was very ahead of the times. And we have a great collaborator with Sir, Professor Jayachandran here, with whom in the 1980s they did a project about yoga teaching to mentally handicapped children. And this was already like 30, 40 years ago, where already there was methods of yoga for mentally handicapped children, which means that yoga can help people with mental problems as well. And That's what we are seeing now, more and more people coming to yoga. But more important than that, I think Sir also at a later part of his life opened the doors of yoga in a different form, in a spiritual form, through what is called Vedic chanting, which is also very unique to our tradition, and that's another major thing that Sir did. And again, yesterday, those of you who were here saw Sonia speak about, and she runs a wonderful school called Vedic Chant Center in America. All this would not have been possible without Sir's contribution. So all these are some small things that Sir contributed, which I think many of you should actually know and remember. And I think it's not just for that we are here, but more importantly, the thing he always used to say was that the magic of yoga is not in the techniques. The magic of yoga is actually in the relationship that you share. And I think that is what I really feel very humbled by all of you being here on a very auspicious day where you are supposed to be with your families, but you rather chose to be here, which means that this relationship that you had with Sir, directly or indirectly, had a profound effect in your hearts. And I think that is what is the best thing that Sir taught us. And that's why I also really love that he called his book The Heart of Yoga, because that is the place for relationships. And I think that is where we need to also start thinking about how to take yoga. It is not in the body, it's not in the head, but it is much more something to do with the heart. And we need to open our hearts to actually understand and explore yoga in its full capacity. So it's something I just want to say today, because we should not just remember a person and just forget about it. We should remember what that person stood for. And that spirit is what we are here for. And yesterday we had a set of wonderful speakers, and today also we have a great set of speakers as well. And